deify her as well. And her name becomes Ishtar, or Ashtaroth, or Astarte. And in English, it's called Easter. She is the bare-breasted fertility goddess of the East. So her husband is the god of the West, of the sun god, and she is the god of the sunrise, or the East. And their son becomes the son of the sun god as well. Now follow me along here, because we'll continue to go through this as we work through. But what happens is every spring equinox, on the first Sunday after the spring equinox, they would have what they called Ishtar's Sunday. And they would have a sunrise service, and the sunrise service, they would impregnate virgins on the altar, and then 1 year later, they would have 3-month-old babies. So the following year, they would sacrifice the 3-month-old babies on the altar, and they would take the blood of that infant, and they would dip eggs into the blood of the sacrificed children. And the eggs in ancient times were a symbol of incredible fertility. And so they even actually believed that the earth was born out of a giant egg. Matter of fact, when Semiramis dies and they deify her, her husband apparently thought it wasn't time for her to come to heaven, so he threw her back down in a giant egg. She landed in the Euphrates River, and the egg popped open, and the first thing that she did was turn a bird into an egg-laying rabbit. And so, as crazy as that sounds, my friends, that's a 3,000-year-old Babylonian legend, and that's where we get the Easter eggs, that's where we get the Easter bunny, that's where we get the dyeing of Easter eggs, that's where you get Lent from. Lent did not come from 40 days of Jesus in the wilderness. They were practicing this 1,000 years before Jesus even showed up. Matter of fact, the reason why you eat Easter ham on Sunday is in commemoration of killing the wild boar that killed Tammuz. They would kill a boar on Ishtar's Sunday every single year. And so you have the story of Nimrod and the sun god setting up the stage all the way back 4,000 years ago, setting the stage for every single pagan cultic religion that would follow, would be a remnant, and a foundation and a point of origin goes back to this single story with Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. Okay? So let's pick up that story, and we'll fly through this so you can see this. Now, just so you know, there's a couple other names that you might have heard of Baal. Now, in Egypt, they were called Isis and Osiris, okay, which was Semiramis and Tammuz. In Phoenicia, they were called Ashtaroth and Baal. In Greece, they were called Aphrodite and Adonis. And in Rome, they were called Venus and Cupid. That's where we get Cupid from. Cupid was baby Tammuz. And even in the Far East, Cupid was known as Zoroaster. Zoro means seed, and Aster is Ashtaroth, or Easter. It literally means the seed of Easter. But that's not what it means to me. Well, we're going to come back to that, because I know that already there are some of you out there that are probably thinking that that's not what it means to me. Well, hold on to your seats, because we will deal with that as we move forward. All right, let's take a look at the screen here, and we're going to walk through and show you some ancient pictures of Ishtar and Tammuz. Now, this is Isis and Osiris, which is Ishtar and Tammuz, a 3,500-year-old idol. Notice what's on her head there. She actually has a crescent moon, and then she actually has a symbol of the sun that's cradled in that moon. This is a pagan carving of the solar deity Baal Hadad, depicted as a disc and a crescent. And if you'll notice right there, right in the middle of your screen, there is a moon, a crescent, and then the sun is right in between it. That is the symbol of the sun god of Ishtar and Tammuz and Baal. And here's what you see. The Catholic Eucharist is placed in this object. They place the Eucharist dead center in that object. Now, I actually found this online, and I'm going to read it to you. This is what it said. It said, Eucharistic adoration is held on the first Friday of each month for the purpose of honoring and praying to the Blessed Sacrament. I found that online, and I'm going to leave that anonymous. But folks, people pray to this sacrament. Now, I'm going to give you a close-up, zoomed-in view here of that. Can you see that? Very closely at the bottom, inside the circle, is a crescent moon, and they put the Eucharist, the wafer, the little piece of bread, right on top of it, and it is the exact symbol that was found between Tammuz and Semiramis. Matter of fact, here's another one that is a lot more clear. The crescent moon cradle within the sun-shaped monstrance of the Roman Catholic Church. And every Catholic church in the world has this symbol, and they don't even know, or maybe they do, where it comes from. The pine cone staff is also another ancient pagan symbol that's used to symbolize the solar gods, okay? And I'll explain the three parts of that in just a moment, but a pine cone was a symbol of fertility from the fir tree that was green all year round. The pine cone right here is being held by a Mexican god, symbolizing rebirth and the sun. You'll notice on the left side of your screen you have the fir tree, or the pine tree, or what we would call the Christmas tree today, and the pine cones on the right. The largest pine cone sculpture on earth is in the Court of the Pine in the Vatican itself. The pine cone right here is upon the Pope's staff. I'll give you a close-up of it right there. Why did they choose the pine cone? Where did it come from? It comes from this ancient pagan sun god worship, is where they get that symbol. The trident is another symbol. This is an ancient satanic and pagan hand gesture called the trident. Now, it can be in many different forms. If you pull the camera back to me for just a second, what you're going to see is that sometimes it will be like this, and sometimes it'll be like this. And this is a satanic symbol even today. As a matter of fact, in 2005, when President Bush was in Norway, he finished his speech and he did this to the crowd. And whether he knew it or not, everyone in Norway knew that this was a satanic symbol, and they couldn't believe it. And the papers picked up on it, the news media picked up on it, that this symbol is the trident, and it has to do with allegiance to Satan. So if we move forward on the next slide, you'll see that this trident goes all the way back to ancient Babylon, and that they placed it in the hands of all their pagan gods. This is Neptune's trident, probably the most famous. We call it the devil's pitchfork today. But back then, this was Neptune's trident. It was the symbol of the sun god, or the serpent. Here's a pagan statue of Jupiter that has been renamed St. Peter, and it's in the Vatican today, holding up the trident symbol with his right hand. And if you'll notice, he has a sunburst over his head, which is exactly what Jupiter would have had as a symbol of the sun god. Here is a baby Jesus, believe it or not, has the pagan trident symbol in his right hand, along with 3 tridents coming off the top and both sides of his head, the exact symbol that we saw over here in ancient Babylon, the trident symbol. All throughout church history we see that. Let's move to a different symbol called the crozier. Now, this is an interesting symbol. This is basically the staff or the cane. What they actually would have been the serpent. Okay, it's representative of the serpent. The Greek goddess Athena here is depicted holding the serpent crozier in her right hand, which is a symbol of power. Here, a Mesopotamian king with his crooked divining staff, his divining staff that represented the serpent crozier. Okay, they used this as a mystical stick to conjure up the dead, and it represented the serpent. Here we have the winged serpent guarding King Tut's throne. And the winged serpent is always attached to the crozier, or the crooked staff. Here you have the Mayan serpent sun god, Quetzalcoatl, depicted coming from the mouth of a winged dragon or a winged serpent. And the reason why I'm going through this, folks, is I was showing you that all over the world you have the symbols of the enemy everywhere, that his fingerprints are all over every religion, every culture, and every town. Literally, in the world, he has his stamp, and we don't even know it. Here we have the winged serpent carrying departed souls to heaven. King Tut holds the crooked auger in his hand, which is the serpent crozier in his hand. Here is a winged serpent door handle on St. Mary's Cathedral in San Francisco, California. Look at this, folks. This is the winged dragon on the papal crest in the Vatican Museum. Why is a winged dragon on a religious crest? I have no idea, but the enemy knows, because he's the same serpent in the garden, shows up at the end of time and all through time. This is a Roman Catholic serpent crozier of the bishops as well as the high church officials. And you'll notice you'll see a winged dragon that is actually right inside the crozier. Here's another one, a little better view of it. Here's one of the saints holding a serpent crozier. Another picture of a Roman Catholic priest holding the crozier, the crooked staff. And here's my favorite. This is now you can't really see it probably very well on your screen, but right above where you hold your hand, above the ball there is a king. It's actually from the waist up a king, and out of the crown of his head is a serpent that is coming out as the crooked part of the crozier, with the serpent blowing fire out of his mouth. And probably the most famous pagan symbol that's out there is the sunburst or the solar wheel. Here we see a solar wheel or a sunburst on an Assyrian Babylonian altar for the sun god Baal. The very god Nimrod, we have his symbols right here. This is the sun god Baal. His symbol is the 8-pointed star. Now I want you to look carefully on your screen, because you're going to see this in multiple images from this moment on. But the sunburst almost always has the symbol of the sun god has 8 points, which creates 8 sections of the star or the wheel. There's 8 sections or 8 spokes of the wheel. Here's a great example of it in a Buddhist temple in Thailand. Okay? The enemy seems to move around very freely. This is a solar wheel depicted in the floor tiles of the monastery in St. Ignatius. This is the exact solar wheel that we saw in Babylonian times that was depicted as the sun god Baal. And matter of fact, if you look carefully, you'll see the very dead center is a sun wheel, and then another sun wheel, and then another sunburst. Inside, wheels within wheels. If you remember Ezekiel's wheel within wheels, this is a fraud. The enemy counterfeits what is holy and makes it unholy. This is the largest solar wheel on earth. My friends, this is St. Peter's Square at the Vatican in Rome. An aerial view taken from Google Earth from about 10 miles up. You are looking at one massive solar wheel. And it's very clear, you can see it, the 8-pointed star, and you can see the 8 sections of the wheel. And then there is the hub in the center, and I'll show you what's in the center of the hub in just a moment. A Roman Catholic church in Scandinavia displays the face of the Babylonian sun god right on their pulpit. Here's the face, is that child within the fertility symbol of the sun rays on a Roman Catholic altar. This Hindu deity in Paris has a large halo sun disk behind the head. These halo sun disks are none other than a depiction of the sun god and the sunburst in another form. Here's a sun disk behind the head of this Roman Catholic statue in Westminster Cathedral in London. Here's Mr. Krishna with the sun disk behind his head. And various saints, and Mary, Jesus, all having the sun disk behind their head. Where did they get that idea? They didn't just make up that idea. That comes directly from ancient paganism. And where do we find the sunburst, the symbol of Baal today? Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, we find it on department store Christmas trees. Right there, we have the 8-pointed star at the top of the Christmas tree. And I'll explain where the Christmas tree came from a little bit later, but this is the symbol and where we have the star. The star story that we have today of being the star in Bethlehem, and that's where the kings came and they found baby Jesus laying in the tomb. That is not the truth, ladies and gentlemen. That is a made-up story. This story predates that story by far, by thousands of years, in fact. It just is very convenient to make the star of Bethlehem, but that is